Good evening and welcome. I'm Chris Fuller. I'm the Vice President, Chief Sponsorship and Mission Integration Officer at St. Joseph's College. And this is day 2 of Mercy Week, which it runs till Friday. And this year we are focusing on the Sisters of Mercy, critical concern of women. My guest for this conversation is Melissa Skahan. And Melissa is the Vice President of Mission Integration at Mercy Hospital here in Portland, Maine. She's also the executive director of McAuley Residence there. Since she was a child, when her mother served as a nurse in the Sisters of Mercy Motherhouse, she desired to serve others within the context of the Mercy mission. She emphasizes outreach as a critical role in the Catholic healthcare system, especially focusing on the most vulnerable to advance change in a systemic way that creates a more just society. And under Melissa's leadership, the McAuley Residence has partnered with Community Housing of Maine for expansion into a new child-appropriate 15-unit residence. She's also transformed the addiction and support programs available to women at the McAuley Residence into a holistic, evidence-based model to combat substance use disorders. And the results are that 80% of the women remain clean and sober, and 95% reunify with their families and children. And that's why Melissa is our guest tonight, is to talk about the McAuley Residence and talk about her work there. So welcome, Melissa. Thank you for joining me for the conversation tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me.
So I want to start at the beginning because my introduction into the Mercy fold was joining St. Joseph's 2 years ago. But I had previously worked for other institutions, some of them with other religious orders and some of them diocesan. But your history really is very much intertwined with Mercy and the Sisters of Mercy. So let's start there. Can you talk a little bit about growing up and your relationship, your relationship to the Sisters of Mercy growing up?
Sure. So, I grew up in an Irish family in Portland. My mother, we were a large family, 6 children. And my mother, by the time she started working for the sisters, was a single mother. So truly, was working very hard to keep the family together. And I just remember as a little girl going to the mother house and being fascinated by, at that time it was a bustling place filled with sisters. So you truly had, I'll never forget novices. I think they were probably the ones that interested me the most with their white habit and they were silent. So I'll never forget that, and just the different aspects of the mother house. My mother adored the Sisters of Mercy. Truly, from the time, I was little, she spoke about them in a leadership fashion. I think they, it is truly that direct connection to service. I think that she held that for me as a young girl as something to aspire to. So, my career trajectory, I started in public education and had done a variety of different things in that space. And then really was looking for more, was looking probably for my calling and didn't know it at the time. So I reached out to Mercy Hospital and in kind of a moment of discernment and connected with then the Vice President of Mission Integration. And he invited me to come to Mercy. And it's been an incredible journey. The sisters have a clarity of both faith and service that I think the combination of both can make all things good occur. When I think about McAuley Residence, we have transformed it into a high profile program, certainly within the state of Maine, but outside of Maine, with dramatic impact. And it's rooted in all of the things that the sisters care about. It's rooted in that notion of human flourishing and, and truly that reverence for persons. So there's no surprise to me, I guess, as I reflect back that I'm where I am, because it truly, from the time I was a little girl, the Sisters of Mercy as a role model, as truly a faith community that was held up as something to connect with and to follow. So no surprise, I'm here now.
Any examples from your growing up in terms of particular examples you remember of the sisters, you say either serving as leaders or role models?
I think there were specific sisters. So Sister Consuela White, certainly, it was fascinating to me as a young girl to, hear of her and see her occasionally. And then when I came to Mercy Hospital, Sister Consuela was still connected to the hospital. And to just understand, I guess, as an adult, the scope of her impact as it relates to nursing practice and nursing, certainly at Mercy. There were several. I mean, Sister Mary Daniel, I could go on with different sisters who are, were just such an incredible force. I think it was their commitment to each other, that clarity of faith. I don't think that's anything that, there is such a beauty to it when it is as pure as many of the sisters can hold up for us.
So I'm curious, in terms of your transition, like you said, you were in public education, you came to Mercy Hospital, you moved into this role with mission integration. So I'm going to start with an analogy. My own background, my doctorate is in biblical studies, but I would say I really didn't know anything about the Bible till I actually had to teach it. I knew a lot of stuff about the Bible. I knew how to write papers about the Bible. I knew how to write a dissertation about the Bible, but not until I was in the classroom that I really, I think, learned about the Bible, because I was actually teaching it, and I had to teach it to young people and try to make it interesting to them. I'm curious by analogy, in terms of, you grow up in a setting where you were familiar and around the Sisters of Mercy, but when you actually started the work, did certain things become more real to you, perhaps that you were not either aware of or just hadn't thought about previously, when it was simply just part of your day-to-day interactions with the sisters?
So certainly when I think back to education, when I left education, those who knew me well, certainly in education and personally, said, "Oh, Melissa, you'll be back. You'll be back in education." At the time, I was really very much in leading efforts around service learning, character education, working with at-risk children, and doing a bit of development as well. And so I really felt like I was serving in a lot of different ways. I felt like that piece of me was called or engaged. But then I came to Mercy, and there truly is a different level of service when it is working with the most vulnerable. The mission of Mercy Hospital is special concern for a poor and disadvantaged, and we actively seek out the most vulnerable among us, and with that, I have had incredible opportunities to work closely with the immigrant community, people who have just arrived in Greater Portland, fleeing for their life. Stories are, so extraordinary that you're amazed that you have the person before you has the strength and resilience to stand, and to be in a position now that has positional authority enough to influence that is just such rewarding. Very similar with McAuley Residence. The women of McAuley, without a comprehensive approach, they truly don't have opportunity to flourish. If you look at substance use disorder and families specifically affected by substance use disorder, there are a lot of different access points for treatment, but none of them are comprehensive in nature, and none of them really get the desired outcomes consistently. So, it is truly that, that previously I was working in an environment that probably was more resourced, and now I'm working among the poorest of the poor. and it is incredibly rewarding and thrilling. We have a remarkable team at Mercy, just remarkable people who all feel as compelled as I do to really influence things in a significant way. So it's a very different environment. I think also in education, at times decisions and kind of the pace of change can be slow. It can be very methodical and thoughtful. Healthcare, it is a million miles a moment. I mean, we literally are, opening a mass vaccination, clinic in a week, and where, it's truly, it's incredibly dynamic. But when you are tied to that true Mercy mission, there's nothing like it.
Mm. When people sometimes ask me what I do, if they're not within the world of Catholic higher ed, it's an unfamiliar position. A mission officer is
Sure.
kind of unique in higher education in Catholic institutions. I imagine it's probably similar within healthcare as well. So when people ask you, what do you do? And you say, I'm the vice president of mission, how do you describe it for them if they're unfamiliar with that role within Catholic healthcare?
Absolutely. My scope is very broad. I usually probably would begin by saying I'm responsible for our strategy for vulnerable persons, because that really, when you start to break that down, it begins to touch on every aspect. At Mercy, I'm responsible for the traditional areas of mission integration. So mission services, community benefit, ethics, spiritual care, spirituality at work, those traditional aspects of mission integration. But then I'm also directly responsible for behavioral health, community health, patient experience, patient advocacy, support services. So I have a broad scope. I think and what I love about it is it uses all parts of my brain, because I truly have, and certainly all of my heart, because it really draws from every bit of my person to really get this job done.
So you came to Mercy first as you came to Mercy, then you transitioned into the mission officer's position, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then it was to McAuley Residence. When did you start your work with McAuley Residence?
So in probably 2010, I was asked by then executive team to evaluate McAuley Residence, to really understand how it fit within a health system. Long-standing program of the Sisters of Mercy, very much aligned with their critical concern of women, and it was focused on, it was transitional housing for women. It could be a displaced housewife. It could be a person with mental illness. A wide variety of women resided there, very much aligned with the critical concern. It was at that time that the opioid crisis was really beginning to rear its head, and the implications of that. And I visited we had a detox program at the time, and I'll never forget, we had 3 homeless pregnant women who were detoxing from heroin, and the discharge plan was back to the shelter. And it was very clear to me in that moment that we had an opportunity to really develop something that could help create an environment, as the sisters had for years and years, that would allow people who were in this place to flourish. And so we had opportunity to work with people all over the United States, from the Office of Women's Health in DC, later on the Office of Social Innovation at the White House. All kinds of people really helped us shape and refine the program that McAuley is today. So we have learned a lot in 10 years, or more than 10 years now, and constantly refine the care and attention we deliver there.
So how does the process work then in terms of how do women find you? Do you find them, or how does that how does the process of identifying, or whatever the correct word is, in terms of who has a need and how you can tend to their needs?
So the reality is the need is so great that we receive constant referrals. You know, we often can hear from 3 to 5 women a day who are looking for help. And you know, we have 2 locations now, one in Portland and one in Bangor, and are preparing to open a second location in Portland. You know, the number of families affected by substance use disorder and polysubstance use disorder is truly so great. So we'll receive direct referrals, self-referrals. We'll receive referrals from providers, other providers. We'll receive referrals from the courts, from probation, from the local jail, from a shelter. You know, it's truly all over the place that we receive referrals from the state, a lot from the state, child protective. It's one of those resources that it's hard to judge just how much of it we need in the state. You know, Maine is on a trajectory to, last year we had 502 fatal overdoses. This year we'll surpass that. So it's just an incredibly heartbreaking situation, and women are markedly affected, and with that, often their children are in tow.
I would imagine too, there's not a standard profile for a woman who comes to McAuley Residence. Probably quite a wide variety of women with different needs and different backgrounds, correct?
Absolutely. So it's, you know, we take referrals from all over the state of Maine. Certainly you can have substance use disorder knows no, you know, socioeconomic profile. It reaches all walks of life. And, you know, I think the challenge you see is by the time people usually find their way to us, they have been in and out of jail. They've lost more than one child to state custody. You know, they've often been trafficked. There's a great overlap between polysubstance use disorder and sex trafficking. You know, and most often we do see a lot of generational addiction and poverty. So it can be a cycle that we're seeking to interrupt. And, you know, we often will have, you know, women who have tried multiple different approaches, may have been in and out of residential treatments, and are really looking for something that is, you know, evidence-based and long enough. That's the beauty of McAuley. It's a 2-year length of stay. So we have the ability to really ensure that people have time to practice success and truly get into that transformative stage. It's a very disciplined approach. So it really helps to bring, you know, kind of order to chaos, which is often very much a part of their lived experience.
You know, that was going to be my next question. Is you mentioned that I think what you identified was gaps in the kind of care that women were receiving, and that what you were working to put together was a more holistic approach for these women. So I think you've answered part of the question, was the length of time. What else goes into, you know, caring for the women who come to you and are served by McAuley Residence?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started doing the research, I think one of the things that struck me is when you look at residential treatment as a mode of care delivery, you know, it's a high cost model. It's, you know, it most often is over $100,000 a month for an expense. And what you watch is people come in and get maybe a day length of stay, maybe a 6-month length of stay. But then when they exit that environment, so it's not an authentic environment, they exit and they go back to their life. And so the ability for them to really transform or to really not relapse is pretty limited. What you see often is just a cycle of multiple relapses, multiple encounters with the same treatment mode. So at McAuley, what we do is it's very deliberate. We build, it's a phase system. We build an external treatment team and the intent of that is to ensure that when the family exits McAuley, nothing is disrupted. The only thing that changes is where they lay their head. So they have my team at McAuley. We have an LCSW, we have a parent, excuse me, a parent coach, we have a education coach, we have a trauma coach, and a drug counselor. So it's really a recovery coach. So we have a lot of different players that really embrace that role of coach, and it's all about building capacity. It's all about people restoring their faith in their ability to be highly successful. So often by the time they come to us, phase one, often people struggle with eye contact. They struggle to really feel that they're worthy of this level of care and attention. And what we do in phase one is restore that. We really help them reconnect with their gifts and reconnect with a potential vision for themselves and their family, all the while building this really strong external treatment team. And then we ensure that there's seamless communication between the two bodies. So it's an intensive approach. Phase one, it has curfews, random drug testing, apartment checks, and then they are deeply supported by parenting, education, and coaching. So they build capacity to ready themselves to receive their children. So it's, so what I love about it is phase three, as people transition to their new home after a 2-year length of stay, they still have the same therapist. They still have the same physician. They stay connected to us for aftercare, but they have all of these different supports in community that remain with them, and it's not disrupted in any way.
So it sounds like stability is an important factor, creating a sense of stability that what they're experiencing as they go through the program in McAuley Residence will be consistent then with their experience of when they exit and return back to home.
Absolutely. And what we often hear from from women is it's often the first time they feel safe. So it's building upon, it's allowing them to practice what it takes to be successful and to create that safe and healthy environment. So, we really teach women how to have boundaries, to choose healthy relationships, to really assert their control over different aspects of their life that they truly have felt are out of their hands. So it truly is all about capacity building.
In what ways have the last 18 months impacted both the work at Mercy Hospital with its mission to serve the poor community and the work at McAuley Residence?
Yeah, so it's hard to even begin to describe the work at Mercy Hospital because we did, as I mentioned, COVID persists in the hospital environment, so we are, experiencing a continued surge. It has been an incredible journey in the last, almost 2 years as we head towards spring. It's everything from, in the early days where we had COVID units and, the remote testing sites that we created and the mass vaccination site for the immigrant community and other diverse communities to, we opened a monoclonal antibody clinic tomorrow that will go live. So it's still very much a part of the work. We certainly have learned a lot about COVID and are well poised if patients present to us to provide them excellent care. But it's still a lot for our staff who have worked really hard for a long time. We also, for McAuley, I am thrilled that, we have persisted and still accepted referrals and new families throughout this entire pandemic. We opened Bangor, the Bangor location, in March of 2020.
Yes.
Quite the moment. But the beauty of it is, we are thriving now, and we're a vital resource in Bangor, which has significant resource needs for families. So, I'm thrilled that we're, there were periods of times where some of our groups and services that we deliver were Zoom, and some of them still remain Zoom. But we also have much going on face to face, and more individualized than group. Groups are pretty much Zoom, but just thrilled that we're able to continue this work and really that we have people, wonderful colleagues who are willing to lean in during this challenging time.
And you mentioned earlier when we started our conversation that you've also had organizations reach out to you from other parts of the country. What kinds of questions do they ask you when they're reaching out to you? What are they seeking when they're communicating with you?
It's really about the comprehensiveness of the approach. As I mentioned, so often people get bits and pieces of treatment in different locations, and it's fractured and not highly coordinated. So when you think about mother and children, these are highly complex families with significant trauma, often undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. Children are just as complex as mom, and often require a variety of in-home interventions, be it for behavioral interventions with the parenting educator or mental health support from a variety of clinicians. So when you start looking at the comprehensive nature of or how high acuity these families are, people are trying to understand how to really get the same outcomes that we do consistently. Certainly McAuley at times will go through difficult periods where we'll have a challenging group, or we'll have people that relapse, but overall we have very consistent outcomes with a highly complex group. So people are trying to figure out truly how to do it, how to really deliver the services, how to develop the right financial model, different approaches. This is not Maine's challenge is not unique. It is widespread across the United States. I think the challenge that we face in Maine is our fatal overdoses continue to rise, and so that is just something that I think we need to continue to really pay attention to.
And you mentioned the continuum of care for the women you serve, that it continues after they leave McAuley Residence and return home. in terms of the women you served over time, you didn't pass that. Have some of them or a number of them remained in touch with you or in their lives?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we do have, we do have constant contact or frequent contact is probably a better way to describe it with alumni, and they're all over the country. Many of them have gone on to complete higher education and are doing quite well. What I love about it too is just this week we had a woman. She's probably left us been out of McAuley for about 4 years or so, and reached out. She was going through a difficult time, still, in recovery, but just needed to reconnect. So she reached out to some of the clinical team and actually attended a meeting today at McAuley. That's the beautiful addition of virtual meetings, because you truly can have, really additional group there as well.
So what if it's possible, what would you describe as the most kind of meaningful part of the work that you've done there?
I think it's truly restoring. It's restoring women's faith in themselves. I think that's probably the most powerful thing to witness, because when you do that, the world begins to open for them. Reminding people who have, presented in such a broken fashion. There's such shame and guilt for moms with substance use disorder. That it's an incredible opportunity to remind them on day one that they're worthy and that we will do everything in our power to support their transformation. And then watching it occur, just watching a mother begin to, what I love to watch is very often as moms come in and we begin to, we have a very deliberate process for family reunification. And as visits begin, you can often hear, moms may raise their voice a lot. They may use, not loving language. They're really going to model whatever lifestyle they had as children. So they don't have healthy things to draw from often. And then what I love to watch, because of the intensive interventions at McAuley, is all of a sudden you hear things like, "Oh, please use your inside voice," and just these different approaches, and they emerge so quickly. And you just watch people build incredible skill, and you know that it's truly from things that they are learning and gaining and keeping at McAuley versus from whence they came.
Hmm. My our work as mission officers, we both work in settings where the beneficiaries of this incredible group of women of great fortitude, a great faith, who came to a part of the country at the time that they did that was in many ways anti-Catholic, sometimes violently so. They persevered and established these institutions all throughout Maine, serving communities all throughout Maine. But like many other orders, their numbers have declined in more recent decades. And for me here, my work then is raising the question of, what does it mean to be Mercy with so few sisters here among us? I feel like it's been handed to us now as a responsibility. So I'm curious to know your kind of insights on this, having worked there at the hospital for the period of time that you have. Is how do you address this in terms of knowing that there are fewer sisters with us, but the work of Mercy is all of our work? So how would you describe what that work is?
Absolutely. How you just described it, Chris, is exactly what I say at general orientation. Is truly the sisters have handed this work to us. So it's something that all of us are called to model in our day to day. I also talk to colleagues at Mercy about, mercy is, it's a habit of mind. It's the way we encounter the world, and it's rooted in something that we are just we hold with such reverence at Mercy. So it's, for me, it is providing opportunities for others to experience a lot of the same things that we do, that I have had the privilege to do. If it weren't, if it truly was not, a great example is, the one of the local jails had a COVID outbreak today, and so, I sent a team from Mercy went and provided the testing for 300. And the ability to then spend time and debrief with people and make that connection to the works of Mercy is just an incredible opportunity. It's I think it truly is helping to draw that connection to people and ensuring that we allow and hold up these moments of mercy so that people can not only experience it, but if they're not directly involved, point to it. I think that it is universally held that when you have some of these direct experiences, that it influences you and helps to carry forward the mission and the Mercy identity. I'm a Mercy associate, as well, and I think that also, does afford a connection to the sisters. I think it's. I think that the closer people get to the work of Mercy, and the more that we can make it clear to them, what it is rooted in, people want to be a part.
You mentioned the debriefing, and that's, when I came here and was reading about Catherine McAuley, the sisters and their work, there is no doubt, right, that the sisters as an order are about being in the communities, identifying needs, getting work done, but getting work done within the context of reflecting on that work.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's exactly what you described, that what a Mercy can offer to any kind of setting is that we're not just about the work. That's very important, but the work within the context of reflection as well, and the meaning of that work.
Absolutely.
I'll open it up here to anyone who's joined us. If anyone has any questions for Melissa with regard to her work or McAuley Residence, now is your time. If you want to throw something either in the chat or just open your mic and ask the question, I'll let you do so. Does anyone have a question for her? Actually, there's a question I forgot to ask you, Melissa. Are there ways that people can support McAuley Residence? Can they make donations, or are there avenues by which they can support the work?
Absolutely. So we do, always welcome donations. As you can imagine, a lot of the women come in with just their very few belongings, and often as we reunify families, then the children also may have needs. So, certainly donations are wonderful. We are always, we do certainly have different groups that'll support with a paper goods drive, or lots of different ways there as well. Would encourage people to reach out to me if they're looking for suggestions, or certainly the foundation, Mercy Foundation, would be the place to make a donation on behalf of McAuley.
Okay. Yeah. And are there future goals you're working towards with regard to the work of McAuley Residence? Things that aren't yet part of the program you'd like to see part of the work that what the residence offers?
So I think one of the interesting things, so out of the gate, family reunification was not a programmatic goal. But then as we watched really the opioid crisis take hold, you watched a lot of families children being removed from homes. So it became a programmatic goal and very much a focus of phase one. With that, we saw a decline in the number of families that were, or moms who were entering higher education. And one of the things we know is that it's truly that higher education helps to truly advance that transformation, or helps to really make sure that there are, that the implications for the family improve over time. So we have added a education or success coach this year in the Portland location. And I'm fascinated to see what that looks like. It's truly somebody who helps advance higher education applications, helps somebody complete their equivalency exam, helps them really access a lot of the aspirational work that had been starting to take a little bit of a backseat because of the complexity of the families. So really excited to advance that. We do have a request for earmark funding with Senators King and Collins to advance, to expand Bangor and open a family learning lab. And that would really allow for more transformative work in that higher education component. I do see that as a real opportunity to break that cycle of addiction and poverty, and really set these families, for their a new life.
Are there, that makes that question, I don't know if the logic flows here from my question, but it does make me think, are there, in terms of when you describe the McAuley Residence and the work that you do there, that Mercy does there, are there stereotypes that you have to address? Sometimes when people hear you work with women in certain circumstances, do people have certain assumptions about who you serve that you have to address? And what are some of those assumptions that people make about the community you serve?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, there's a lot of bias associated with, persons with substance use disorders. So there's, I think there can be, there can be assumptions made around their potential as a fit parent. That's absolutely something we overcome. We certainly work very hard to advance employment opportunities for people, and at times that may require work to be done with, with employers. It can be also opportunity to, landlord, same thing. So if somebody is leaving McAuley and you have somebody with a criminal history or a history of trafficking, or, there also is an opportunity to really provide education and overcome biases. So, I think I think it can be widely held, certainly in different, even higher education settings. We've had to work with professors to build understanding around, the women that we're working with. Most often when people gain that understanding, when they really begin to see the progress and potential in each of these women, then they are in a position where they understand more fully, and they become, part of the team, and really champion for the women as well.
Oh, that's great. I'll end here, but again, I'll ask if anyone with us still has any questions for Melissa.
Hi, Melissa. I'm Cassie Clemens.
Hi.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you and to let you know that you're so clear and your passion just comes through. I want to go to work tomorrow and just be a little more motivated. You have a lot on your plate, and it sounds like you handle it well. And I appreciate you giving us your time tonight. I have a lot of notes.
Oh, great.
have a lot of notes. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think it's actually a really good note to end on, is thanking Melissa for her work and all the efforts that both you, but I know it's not just you, it's quite a team that you work with.
Absolutely.
It helps make all this work both at Mercy Hospital and at McAuley Residence. So on behalf of your fellow Mercy institution here in Maine, we thank you for all of your work to bring mercy into the community and to bring it to those who are most in need and most vulnerable. And thank you for making time for us tonight for the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So appreciate the opportunity and for being with another Mercy community anytime.